Model T going down the road today. Oh, look at that. We'd all turn our heads, you know, and see and look. Yes, and there was a royalist battalion that was supposed to join the king. For some reason or other, they took the wrong route. They didn't have Google Maps, or maybe they did have Google Maps or whatever, but they missed the king. Yes, and he gets to the frontier, and they recognize the king. And some of the men in the coach say to the king, "Flee. Go." And the king orders and he says, "Will they fire on us?" And they said yes, and he was afraid his family would be injured, so he didn't flee, but that was the death sentence. So they haul him back to Paris, and they had Malesherbes defend him, and of course it was predetermined ahead of time what the result was. He was condemned by more than 40, but the execution of the king was another divisive force in France, because many people, had the national vote been held, there were many people who would have supported the king. All right. The other radicalizing force, of course, was the war, which broke out from 1792 to 1815, which you mentioned at the beginning of the hour, which is why we were going to arm citoyens. Yes. That is still the French national anthem, but it is a war song. They want to kill their enemies. They want to water the furrows of France with their blood. Tremble, tyrants, yes. 5 million European men died in the war. 1.5 million Frenchmen. All told during the Revolution, about 2 million Frenchmen out of a population of 28 million. Think of that. 2 million out of 28 million died during the French Revolution. Okay, there's the war. Or we can flip to the next. Early on, when France was expanding outside the borders, they thought everyone would welcome the revolution. We're going to welcome these revolutionaries who come in and they confiscate all our fruit and our vegetables. They're going to take all of our cattle and our horses. They're going to melt down the church bells. They're going to destroy our religious artifacts. They're going to take all of the treasury. Of course they're going to welcome us with open arms, aren't they?
Well, they probably didn't phrase it like that.
No, but that's what happened. Frenchmen thought they would be welcomed abroad and wanted liberty, equality, fraternity. Early on in the Revolution, we have this lovely symbol of fraternity. You see? There's those two little children, the little black and white child. They're embracing, and they're standing on, what's the snake the symbol of?
Tyranny.
Yes, tyranny and discord. Yes, they're squashing tyranny and discord. There's Lady Liberty, Marianne, looking on. She's got the red, white, and blue. She's very patriotic. She's holding the seashell, the symbol of plenty. And before somebody asked me, yes, it was quite common in the pictures of the time to expose the breasts of women. That was just an artistic convention. Right? All right, so let's flip to the next, Lori. There's Liberty touring the world. And this symbol was quite common at the time. You see, there's Lady Liberty. She's got on the red cap of liberty. Why was the red cap of liberty the symbol of liberty? Why was the red cap the symbol?
Was it soaked in the blood of her victims?
Yeah, that's a gory thought. Okay, that's a good thought, but a gory one, no. Oh, yes. Yes. Well, actually, red was the symbol of the executioner. It was the symbol of death in the old regime. But it was not the red. The reason they did it was because they modeled themselves after Rome. They thought that France was the new Rome. That's why they had the fasces. That's why they called England what? England was the great enemy of Rome. It was. We will sow salt in their soil. Yes. Yes. England was Carthage. They're doomed to defeat. All right. So there she is, and she's often dressed in a Roman toga and so forth. She's got the red cap of liberty there. There's the soldier. See, they're showing the way with light. The enemies are being trampled before them. Liberty is touring the world. The French are moving over the borders of France. forward, let's see the next. Here we have felicity, the felicity of humanity liberated. See all these children happily embracing one another. There's the eternal eye watching over France. Liberty, fraternity, equality. All right? So when they went into towns, Laura, let's have the next. They would have fraternal meals. And what the first thing they would do is, believe it or not, they would plant liberty trees. You see that little tree over there? They would plant linden trees because they were fast growing, and they usually decorated them with the liberty bonnet, the red cap of liberty. Right? Now I should say, the only places where the French Revolution triumphed is where there were French revolutionary troops. Because what happens is the locals weren't really happy about handing over all the treasury and all the oxen and horses and sheep and cattle and the artistic masterpieces of the area. When the French came through, they had lists of the artistic masterpieces in each area, and they carted them back to Paris. The Brandenburg Gate went back to Paris. The Venetian lions went back to Paris. They even took out columns of the cathedral in Aachen and carried them back to Paris. Things that you wouldn't think they could loot, they did. Yes. All right, Lori, we need our other song, I think. Okay. All right. And they would sing La Carmagnole. Okay. Here's a nice revolutionary song.
Madame Veto avait promis, Madame Veto avait promis de faire égorger tout Paris, de faire
Now in the middle, you see, there's Liberty.
Mais son goût a manqué,
There's Marie, poor
face à
lady.
nos canonniers. Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son, vive le son, danse. Vive le son du canon.
This one's kind of nice because it's got pictures.
Monsieur Veto avait promis.
There's the third estate. They were supposed to dress in all black.
Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son, vive le son. Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son du canon. Antoinette avait sa vie, Antoinette avait sa
There's the
vie.
Bastille.
De nous faire tomber sur le cul, de nous faire tomber sur le cul. Mais le coup a manqué, elle a le nez cassé.
Émile Desmoulins was executed by his best friend, Robespierre.
Carmagnole, vive le son, vive le son.
Declaration of the Rights of Man.
Carmagnole, vive le son du canon.
She ended up on the guillotine too.
Voyons
On
vainqueur,
it.
son mari se croyant vainqueur. Connaissez-vous notre valeur, connaissez-vous notre valeur. Va Louis Gros-Paour, du temple dans la cour. Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son, vive le son. Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son du canon. Les Suisses avaient promis, les Suisses avaient promis qu'ils feraient feu sur nos amis, qu'ils feraient feu.
There's a soldier of the revolution. There he is in red, white, and blue.
Comme ils ont sauté, comme ils ont tous dansé. Dansons la Carmagnole.
Cartoon with Louis wearing the cap of liberty.
Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son du canon. Quand Antoinette vit la tour, quand Antoinette vit la tour, elle voulut faire demi-tour, elle voulut faire demi-tour. Elle avait mal au cœur de se voir sans honneur. Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son, vive le son. Dansons la Carmagnole, vive le son du canon.
Okay. It was a peasant song, folks, and what they would do during the revolution is they would adopt peasant songs, and they would do the peasant dance. We used to do it, but we don't have room in here. Yeah. And I would do some of the peasant dances, but what it says is "Vive la song, vive la song." It doesn't really say anything. I mean, you ask me what the lyrics are. Most of the French Revolutionary songs did not last because, frankly, folks, they were extraordinarily boring and dull. They would have songs to agriculture, celebrating the wheat, yes, or celebrating grapes, or whatever. And what they did is they took old songs and they changed the lyrics. They even took church hymns and changed the lyrics so they supported the revolution. Yes. Yes. So like the Cathedral of Notre Dame became the Temple of Reason. Of course, they got rid of all the saints and so forth. They got rid of all the king's heads. They knocked them off the outside of Notre Dame. After the revolution, they found the heads and they put them back up, guys. Yeah. But they went and they defaced all the churches and they transformed them into temples of reason and so forth. Yes?
This is just a general question. Do they have like a planning committee for the culture? Like just, here's how we're going to do things?
No, what they did is, yes, they had committees.
Okay, that's
They
fine.
had a committee, and when the armies went out, they had artistic representatives, and he would have lists of all the masterpieces in each town that they took. And of course, the people should be happy, shouldn't they, to give all their masterpieces to Paris? Or shouldn't they be delighted? Aren't they supporting the revolution? And I think I told you I was reading in the French archive. I was chuckling, which you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be chuckling in the archive. But I was reading this one guy, and he said, you know, these people don't want to be free. They don't want to vote the way we think they should vote. If you didn't vote, you could be executed. If you didn't vote the way they thought, you could be executed. Yes. Yeah. Somehow they didn't welcome us with open arms. And he's talking about that he had seized all this property in gold and silver and put it in the church to have it sent back to Paris. And he's riding back to Paris, and somebody stole it. And he's just flabbergasted. Why would true revolutionaries steal all this loot that was supposed to go back to Paris? Yeah. Yeah. So when they came in, folks, they totally looted the area. It's not surprising that people turned against them. Yes. So by 1792, we have then war, and we have terrible atrocities occurring. In the beginning of the revolution, the French armies were repeatedly defeated. The French guillotined more of their generals than died in war. They guillotined 86 generals. All right. If you won a victory and you didn't press it hard enough or whatever, if you're accused of treason, if you were accused of counter-revolution. In many cases, the soldiers lynched their own generals. So in the beginning, it was chaotic. And there were always rumors that Paris was going to be invaded. That leads to the Great September Massacres, when they literally massacre people wholesale in the prisons. They took them out, they had a so-called show trial, and they hacked them to death. So-called September Massacres. Most of the people who were massacred, about 1,500, were from the lower classes. It was very few of the aristocracy and the clergy, because they were common thieves and ladies of the night and so forth. Yes. But when they had a political appointment, they just threw them in the jail. If you remember the clergy, they tossed you in jail. There were significant members of the clergy who were totally wiped out. Yeah. Some of the parish clergy, all of them were killed because they happened to be in a certain prison at a certain time. And so there were side effects of the war as the war goes on. And we see during the war the growth of the counter-revolutionaries. It is estimated now that about 500,000 Frenchmen died during the revolution, opposing the revolution. They supported the clergy, they supported the king, they were opposed to the execution of the king, and later the queen was executed as well. They executed most of the prominent scientists like Lavoisier, most of the prominent poets like Chenier during the revolution. They destroyed most of the intellectuals of the revolution, yes.
Is there another word you could call this aside from revolution? You know what not that I'm saying it needs to be called something else, but I feel like one of the only reasons it held as a revolution was because the people who were behind it were calling it that. But to me, it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like what I think of when I think of revolution. And like, these Frenchmen were dying, like, you know, it's civil war.
I guess
civil war.
It was civil war too. Yeah, if you go to Western France today, which is very, very conservative, you will see monuments to some of those who died in the revolution, monuments to the counter-revolutionaries who were executed.
So like this word keeps like getting this different meaning the more I'm writing
Yeah, more, yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Well, you
more
should
that
read
we
Simon Schama, if you,
positive.
Simon Schama, it's called Chronicle of the Revolution. And he says violence was the hallmark of the revolution.
But I think we have a positive connotation of revolution.
Do we?
Well,
Well, I don't anymore, but I teach the phrase revolution.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
but I think in our culture, you know, like, being like, if an idea is revolutionary, that's a compliment, or if they
Is
say.
it?
Now, I mean, if, like, okay, if you're reading a business article about a startup and they say this revolutionary new business.
Yes.
That's a compliment. Or if you say, you know, this leader with revolutionary ideas about rights, or, that's usually seen as a compliment in our general
it's
society.
an American thing, I think. We were bred that way in our histories to think of our revolution as being a wonderful, glorious thing, but.
There was a side effect to that too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people.
Yeah,
like
which
the
I'm
American
sure we
Revolution, and
No, I mean, there was a lot of, I mean, we've understated that,
Really reworking this word.
yeah. The bloodshed and stuff of the revolution, yeah. Well, I don't know, I'll think it. Anyway, so here's the Army of the Republic. There's Lady Liberty going forth. You see, she's holding the cap of liberty. Yes, she's leaning on the fasces there. She's dressed as a Roman lady because, of course, France patterns itself after Rome. They thought they would be like Rome and last 1,000 years. Actually, they didn't even last 24. But let's go on to the next. I wanted to show you this because all of the generals had their own stationery letterheads. And what are we missing on this letterhead? And I'm watching the time, Laura. We only have a couple minutes left, don't we? We're running out of time. All right, well, we got to finish the war here. Okay.
I don't see fraternity on there, but
Yes, that's right. Early on, okay, in the beginning they said, we're going to welcome all these people as revolutionary brothers. We're going to embrace them. But when the locals resisted, when they didn't want their treasures carted back to France, okay, they didn't want to be conscripted into the war. When they were given worthless assignats to buy things, and the assignat had become worthless, they started to oppose France. And so early on, by 1792, they had basically given up the idea of fraternity. He said, Carnot says, you have to treat them as your enemies. So liberty, equality, and some of the stationaries had liberty or death. Liberté or mourir, liberty or death, yes. There's General MacDonald, you see there's France striding over the world, she's conquering everybody. All right, there's the symbol of war, yes, because we've got to end here. Oh, here's the next one. They gave up fraternity, and here it is. You have a choice. It's liberty or it's death. It's liberty or it's death. See, there's death on the right. There's Madame Liberty on the left. There's that guy who's bringing revolution. You see all the light coming in with him. You have a choice. It was liberty or death. Yep. Now on that somewhat grim note, we got 20 seconds left. Any questions?